Meantime, the 2020 election is just around the corner, and nearly all the Democratic presidential candidates this year are touting some form of universal pre-K or early childhood education. Now, one thing you won't hear them call it: daycare. In today's Bloomberg Equality, our ongoing conversation on the bottom line impact of diversity, I spoke with Bloomberg Opinion editor and columnist Sarah Green Carmichael about the changing language around daycare and childcare and how word choice can influence support.
Most of the Democratic presidential candidates now talk about universal pre-K or access to affordable early childhood education, improving learning. They focus on the outcome for the children. And I think that's because that's a much more universally popular message than daycare, which is a term that kind of reminds people of what mom is doing, kind of reminds people, oh, well, mom's working. And Americans are actually very uncomfortable with this idea of the two-earner family, even though that is the norm.
This is no longer 1950, though. This idea that you have two full-time working parents is a necessity in this day and age, yet the opinion polls show that it's still not popular or something that people are comfortable with.
Yes, 100%. And it's tough because it is the reality of our lives now. You do need two incomes to have a middle-class life in this country. That's what it takes. That's what the norm is. A lot of people take pride and fulfillment in their careers. And yet when you ask people, 44% of people said it would be ideal if one parent could stay home full-time with kids. Only 18% said it was ideal if both parents worked full-time.
So in terms of wording, what gets bipartisan support? What gets people, whether you're conservative or progressive or liberal, more excited or more willing to sign on to the idea that kids should have a place where they can go to during the day so that if both parents wanted to work, they could, or if both parents had to work, they could?
Yes. So this is really interesting because there are advocacy groups that test this and have tested this among Trump voters and Clinton voters in 2016 and Republicans and Democrats. And basically, when you focus on calling it pre-kindergarten, when you talk about educational benefits, when you focus on the knowledge and skills that children will learn, then suddenly you do see bipartisan support. So really, it's about focusing on affordable, locally controlled care, investing in children's futures. This is the kind of language that really gets bipartisan support. And I think something that's very important for the right is that notion of this is locally controlled. It's not a federal program, even if there's federal money, that there's some kind of local control over it. So you start talking about the benefits to kids, and suddenly people are all over it. They're like all about these skills and knowledge that these kids are going to be learning. It's when you call it daycare and just sort of remind people that, oh, this is just a place children are warehoused where while their parents work. That's when you start to see a real divide where Democrats do support that and Republicans, only about a third of Republicans do.
What kind of reaction did you get to your column after you wrote it?
I think people were very supportive. I think that there's a real appetite out there for a solution. In America, daycare or pre-K, whatever you want to call it, is often more expensive in something like 35 states than it is to send someone to a four-year public college with in-state tuition. So we've had a long debate in this country about affordable college, but only a third of Americans ever go to college. Daycare is a really universal need for parents. It's not optional, and I think there's a real sense that it's just gotten too expensive.
Do women lose out? Do families lose out by allowing this debate to be framed in terms like universal pre-K instead of what it actually is, which is daycare or childcare?
That's a really interesting question. I think that there is some part of me that would love to just be like, I'm woman, hear me roar, we are people, we deserve this. And in fact, it's something that benefits families and working dads and single parents and all kinds of people. And it's not just, straight, married, working women who benefit from this and their kids. And so on some level, I wish we could have a sort of more robust conversation. But if calling it pre-K and focusing on the benefits to kids, while it's a policy that just quietly helps women, if that's how we're going to get it done, I'm totally okay with that. I think it's probably the policy that would have the single biggest impact on working women's careers. So whatever we need to do to get it done, I'm okay having a little bit of like a wink and a nod as we have this conversation.